Backslide by Black K Cat. Chapter 27. Arrival. It's been a very long time since Kurama kissed someone for the sheer fun of it. The last few years with Sasuke were so tense and tightly strung that any moment they had together was stolen. A second of softness when they had other more important things to do and never enough time to do them. Each time they touched out of anything but necessity was a chance for Madara to take them by surprise and doom the entire world. They still touched, of course. But the situation made such things a guilty pleasure, one they could never indulge in enough to even begin to satisfy. But here and now, Konoha exists, is at peace. And so Kurama has no reason to resist when Kakashi catches his wrist in the hallway outside the observation room. Nothing to make him push the man away when Kakashi lets the others pass him and then presses him up against the wall without a word. Kurama's breath hitches in his lungs at the look on Kakashi's face when he tugs his mask down, the sheer want that still somehow manages not to feel dirty. His expression is intense, but also gentle, hungry, but at the same time so very, very sweet. With a soft breath, the closest to a word he can manage, Kurama lets Kakashi pin him against the stone, drapes his arms over Kakashi's shoulders, and loops them loosely around his neck, and raises his head when Kakashi leans down across the 2 inches of height that separate them and takes his mouth gently, teasingly. It's an exploration, the way Kakashi kisses him. A discovery. Tongue and teeth and huffs of breath. A smile against his lips that Kurama can't help but answer as a slow, sultry heat curls through him with each press and slide and playful nip. Lips against his cheek and a glancing kiss to the tip of his nose, a soft chuckle when Kurama wrinkles it at him and tugs him back down. Eyelashes against his skin, feathery and soft. Fingers on the line of his jawbone and over the curve of his ear, following the upsweep of hair where it's pulled into a high tail. Kakashi is fully pressed against him, hands all over him, thighs between Kurama's legs, and body undeniably interested, and yet they're still laughing, soft and close. Bare, flickering flashes of sound whenever they can bear to breathe. Kurama tilts his head back against the cold stone, glorying in it, in this moment of them, with nothing else to get in the way, and of course he still loves Sasuke. He always will, with as much of himself as he can possibly spare. But there's less of that now. Fewer bits to linger, empty and forlorn in separation. Far less, and Kurama knows himself well, knows how he falls, and the way he can never quite catch himself in time, never quite wants to. And this is certainly the same. A kiss against the line of his throat, another against the scar there, another over his pulse, and then lower, where his tank top leaves his collarbones bare. Kakashi lingers for a moment, breath warm and soft against Kurama's skin, and Kurama takes advantage of it to twist his fingers in the Kappinen's hair and hold him just that little bit more securely. Because joy has always been fleeting for Kurama, and this is too sweet to relinquish so easily.
I must say, Tsunade, this is truly a surprise.
Tsunade glances up with a faintly wry smile, except in the cup of tea Sarutobi passes across the desk. It's not sake, but maybe for the moment a clear head is better. Believe me, Sensei, you're not nearly as surprised as I am. It's still a mystery why she's even here when nothing has really changed. She's still cursed, those wishing to become Hokage are still fools, and her fear of blood hasn't abated in the slightest, but she remembers looking into blue eyes framed by brilliant red hair, eyes with a bottomless sort of sorrow to them that was hidden well, but not thoroughly enough. Remembers how he needs a family, just barely managed to cover I need a family in his heart. Certainly the brat meant what he said, meant that Kushina's son needs someone female and vaguely admirable in his life, but it's likely Kurama does, too. Like any shinobi, Tsunade has read the bingo book. She knows that Uzumaki Kurama is a bounty hunter who only really appeared a year ago. So if he only started recently, only just a few months ago joined Konoha, it's likely he's been all but alone since Uzushigo fell. Tsunade knows loneliness. She knows it intimately, knows the look and feel and weight of it, that certain strain of solitude that only comes when surrounded by others and aching right down in your soul. Kurama shows all the signs, and the thought that maybe, just maybe she can fix it is enough to tempt Tsunade back to the village she abandoned. She's always been a medic, after all. Always wanted to mend and help and heal above all else, and this is no different. Mito was her grandmother, Kushina the daughter of one of Mito's great nieces, and practically Tsunade's niece as well. Kurama looks like both of them in the shape of his face and the slant of his eyes, the way a brief glance from him seems to peel away the layers and dig right to the heart of things. After Kushina's death, which was practically the end of the Uzumaki clan, Tsunade had stopped keeping track of Uzushi's remnants. Perhaps it was a mistake if it led her to miss someone like Kurama. With a sigh, she swallows a mouthful of the bitter, sharp green tea, letting it clear her muddled thoughts. Her old sensei makes awful tea, and she's never been able to tell whether it was on purpose or not. Uzumaki Kurama, she says abruptly. You know him? Sarutobi gives her a sharp look, dark eyes narrowing faintly, and Tsunade assumes that Kurama made no mention of her in whatever mission report he submitted. The probably didn't want to get up the old man's hopes in case she chose not to return. That seems like the kind of reasoning he'd use.
Kurama-kun? Yes, I know him. Not well, admittedly, but he's a strong shinobi and a dependable man.
The Hokage considers her for a moment.
He is the reason you returned?
Tsunade sighs softly, reaching up to curl her fingers around her necklace. He reminded me, she says reluctantly, of the fact that just because I keep running, it doesn't mean no one will get left behind. And he's sad. Sarutobi finishes for her, smiling faintly, and of course he'd be able to see it.
Yes, he hides it well. But such a thing is to be expected, given his situation. Caring for Naruto has helped, I believe, especially since he's managed to adopt the rest of Naruto's genin team, and even his Jonin sensei as well. But he still has moments of melancholy.
He was tense and bewildered in her arms when she had hugged him, uncertain and lost, and so very, very grateful that it made her want to cry for him. Kurama is still so young, youthful Uzumaki appearance or not, and the weight in his eyes is one that most veteran shinobi wouldn't be able to bear. Tsunade wants to help him with it, at least a little.
You know, Tsunade,
Sarutobi says carefully, and Tsunade is tempted to roll her eyes. Here comes, just as she expected.
The council is still hounding me to choose a successor. After all, the only other likely candidates are either dead or, well, Jiraiya.
Danza's dead? That's a surprise, at least. Tsunade had half thought the old war hawk would live forever, if only despite his numerous enemies.
Sarutobi nods. A heart attack, the examiners tell me.
She doesn't need to be a Yamanaka to read the thought behind that. But you think differently. That earns her a wry smile.
I am old, Tsunade, not a fool. It was a heart attack, of that I'm sure, but the cause is what I would debate. Nonzo was old as well, but he was as healthy as a horse and hardly at risk for such a thing. Add to that the fact that with his death we've uncovered several dozen entirely traumatized and brainwashed root operatives, and well, I think foul play is far more likely a scenario.
Tsunade mulls this over for a moment, thoughtfully tapping her fingers against the ceramic of the cup. She remembers again Kurama's words to her in the middle of that lonely road. Konoha needs your strength. Please, I know you've been living in the wake of a tragedy for a long time now, but can't you see that Konoha is worth more than that? Your brother and your lover both gave everything for it so that those living there could have a home. So preserve their dream. Preserve the village they worked so hard to save. She had given both of them her blessing, her support for their dreams. She had kissed them both on the forehead and told them to work hard. And they had, so very much so. Nawaki and Don both chased their dreams until the very end, wholehearted and unwavering no matter the odds. For years now, Tsunade has dismissed that goal they shared as a fool's dream, useless and suicidal. But now? Blue eyes unwavering, red hair like a tempered flame, an expression of cool, steely resolve only just buried beneath a veneer of respect. Tsunade closes her eyes and smiles to herself, just a little. She thinks of Nawaki, and then she thinks of Dan, both beautiful and dear. Isn't it better to make sure that your sacrifices weren't in vain? Shouldn't you protect Konoha all the more because of what you've given? Stop your hinting, old man, she says, opening her eyes and meeting Sarutobi's startled gaze resolutely. I'll take the hat. Some of the deep carved lines in Sarutobi's face ease as he slumps back into his chair, and it's only then that Tsunade really realizes just how old and worn he really is. It's to be expected. After all, he's over 70. But it's still a shock. He's always been her granduncle's favorite student, one of the bare handful of men who hold the title God of Shinobi, their wise and untouchable sensei, and then revered Saint-Dame. But he's also just a man, for all of his strengths, and an aged one. Once already, he's handed off the hat, slipped happily into retirement until a tragedy called him back into service. He's been an active shinobi longer than almost anyone else in the village, and it's more than taken its toll.
Thank you, Tsunade, he says softly. That eases my mind greatly. After the Chunin exams have ended, I'll start preparations.
I'd forgotten about the exams. Tsunade glances out the window towards the academy proper, where she can just make out the tail end of a group of students. A gaggle of jonin are gathered around a corner from the genin, grouped in 2s and 3s, and bright red catches her attention immediately. She hesitates, wondering, wanting.
Go,
Sarutobi says fondly, plucking the cup from her grasp. She gives him a wry smile because he's always been able to read her better than anyone except perhaps Dan, but willingly rises to her feet. You said Naruto is a genin now? Sarutobi nods.
Yes, and his team is taking part in the exam. Their Jonin sensei is Hokage Kakashi. I believe he and Kurama are close.
Tsunade arches a brow at that, lips tightening. Oh, are they now?
Tsunade.
She waves him off with a huff. Stop it, sensei. You'll still have a Jonin when I'm through with him. But no matter how good a Shinobi Kurama is, he has a fragile heart. That much is clear just looking at him. I only want to make sure the white-haired brat remembers that.
Yes, Sarutobi answers drolly. That would be what I'm afraid of, Tsunade.
But he doesn't try to stop her as she rises and heads for the door, only pausing to give the old man a polite nod before she sweeps out. Shizune is waiting outside the office, Tonton in her arms. She falls into step with ease of long practice and asks softly, Does this mean we're going to be staying, Tsunade-sama? Tsunade pauses mid-step, then turns on her heel to face her apprentice. Do you mind? She asks, because this is something she'd failed to consider. If Shizune, her last remaining piece of Dan, wants to leave, no, Tsunade-sama, Shizune says with a quiet but bright smile. I've never resented Konoha for what happened to my uncle. I'm very happy that we're back. With a soft breath of relief, Tsunade returns her smile. Good. Yes, Shizune will be staying. I told Sarutobi-sensei that I'd accept the position of Hokage. Shizune's beaming smile is clear enough answer as to her feeling in the matter. The sound of voices draws Tsunade's attention away, and she turns to see a group of jonin droop into the hall, laughing and talking. There's a general air of relief to them, and she assumes that the jonin sensei for this round of genin teams must be among them. Half a moment's study is all it takes to pinpoint the head of crimson hair, and she heads for it without hesitation. Uzumaki Kurama! Where's that case of sake? Kurama jerks away from his murmured conversation with Kakashi to stare at her, and just for a moment, a flicker of heartbreaking joy crosses his features. Then is covered by a bright smile, buried under simple happiness at the arrival of a friend, but Tsunade knows what she saw. Tsunade-sama, you came! The redhead slips out of the group and joins her, dipping into a quick bow. Tsunade rolls her eyes, grabs him by his ponytail, and hauls him up into a hug. Red, what did I tell you about hiding things? He's stiff in her hold for a long, endless heartbeat, and then careful, tentative arms come up to wrap around her in return. Kurama relaxes against her with a soft sound that might be pain or gratitude, bows his head and hugs her back. Tsunade closes her eyes and smiles softly to herself, remembering Nawaki and his enthusiastic tackle hugs, Dan and his warm strength. Kurama feels a little like both of them, lean and strong and cheerful, but with an undertone of sorrow that reminds Tsunade, more than anything, of herself. Maybe this can help both of them. When she lets go, it's reluctant, but she makes herself take a step back regardless because she's the future Hokage and people are starting to stare. Kurama smiles at her like he understands, though she doesn't know how he could, and chuckles, raking a hand through his brilliant hair and pulling it out of its tail. It tumbles down around his face 3 shades darker than Kushina's and 2 brighter than Mito's, and his blue eyes are so very, very warm. "You'll get your sake, you drunkard," he promises, humor glinting bright and joyful within the blue. "After the second exam, though, I'll use my winnings to buy you the very best." Tsunade remembers very well the betting that goes on amongst Jonin's finest during the exams and shakes her head fondly. "You're that confident, Red?" But she matches his steps as he returns to his group and nods a silent greeting to the handful of shinobi she knows. Shikaku already looks calculating, and Choza and Inuichi are clearly amused at their friend's preoccupation as they nod back. "Of course," Kurama answers blithely, grinning at her sharp and fox-like. He looks entertainingly like that summons he tracked her down on. "Team 7 will win the whole thing, I've no doubt." He doesn't. Truly, Tsunade reflects, just as certain as Nawaki always was, like an immovable object in the face of human doubts and fears. She smiles and, unable to resist, reaches out to scuff at his hair. "I take this is the team with my little great-nephew on it?" "Who else?" Kurama laughs, enduring her affection with what dignity he can. His teammates are Uchiha Sasuke, the last loyal Uchiha, and Haruno Sakura, who's training as a frontline medic. They're all strong and a good team. He glances at her sideways, eyes slanting in cheerful mischief, and adds, "A very good team. Their goal is to become the next Sannin." Tsunade can't quite decide whether to smile or frown at that, and instead just narrows her eyes at the redhead. Do they know what happened to the last Sannin? Yes, I'm sure that they do. But I don't think they're about to let anything tear them apart, Tsunade-sama. Not power or ambition or fear or anything else. They're a good team. Tsunade shakes her head, then gestures her apprentice up beside her. "Kurama, my apprentice, Shizune. Shizune, my brat of a relative, distant though he might be." Shizune stifles a chuckle, bowing politely. "Hello, Uzumaki-san." "Kurama, please," the redhead returns with a sweet smile. He's good at those kind of expressions, Tsunade thinks with amusement. She'll be surprised if the brat doesn't have a fan club already. "Uzumaki-san makes me feel as old as Tsunade-sama." "Brat!" Tsunade snaps, reaching out to flick him in the side of the head. Unlike most people, though, he sees it coming and smoothly ducks his head, expression never wavering from his relentless good cheer. "That's not nice, Tsunade-sama. I'd say you don't know your own strength, but I think the problem is that you know it too well." He gives her a cheeky grin and slips behind Kakashi, as if that's going to stop her. Tsunade stalks forward, eyes narrowing, and then lunges. Kurama dances out of the way with a graceful sidestep, a 2-hop back, and instead of closing around his collar, her hand lands firmly in the center of Kakashi's Jonin vest. The man's eye widens in sudden, horrified realization. Tsunade smirks evilly and hauls him forward, hisses, "Hurt him, and you'll see just how much I know about the human body, Hatake," into his ear, and then casually tosses him over her shoulder, ignoring his startled yelp. Another lunge, and this time Kurama is too busy laughing at his friend to dodge her successfully, so Tsunade ends up with an armful of giggling redhead and bounces his ears ruthlessly. "Care to say that again, Red?" she remands. "Ow, ow, ow!" Kurama yelps, batting ineffectually at her hands. Then, suddenly, he goes suspiciously still. Tsunade watches his eyes narrow and knows in an instant that it has nothing to do with her or their current circumstances. "Kurama?" she asks softly. Kurama blinks, then looks up at her, as though surprised she's still here, as though surprised she's still there. His eyes go wide, then narrow again, and he murmurs, "In training gown 44 where they're holding the second exam." Someone just summoned Manda. There's only one possible culprit. Tsunade has to consciously keep her hands from clenching into fists. He's after Sasuke as a possible body. Kurama confirms. He glances towards the forest, then back at the Hokage's office. Did you tell Hokage-sama? Tsunade snorts, releasing Kurama, though she doesn't step back. This conversation is better kept private, after all, and there are already eyes on them. One of the downsides of a shinobi village where the inhabitants are generally all nosy. Hardly. Orochimaru was always Sarutobi-sensei's favorite. It's best to leave him out of this until the traitor is dead. She considers for a moment, eyeing the man in front of her. You have a plan? Kurama smiles at her, the expression smaller than it was a few moments ago, and ruthlessly cunning rather than joyful. I do. Then go and deal with him. I'll stay with Sarutobi-sensei in case he gets past you. She orders, and raises her voice to a more conversational level. Come on, brat, we both need to talk to the Hokage. March! Shizune, entertain yourself. This might take a while. Obligingly, Kurama lets her drag him away, calling a quick, Sorry, Kakashi, I'll see you later, as they go. The Kappinen looks slightly wary and is staying well out of Tsunade's reach, but he raises a hand in acknowledgement and moves to fend off the freak in the bright green spandex bodysuit. As soon as they're out of sight around the corner, Tsunade lets go and turns to face Kurama squarely. Red, she says seriously, are you sure about doing this? Kurama glances at her, then out the nearest window and nods, his face equally grave. Yes, he answers simply. I have wanted to kill Orochimaru for a very long time now. Even if my first plan fails, I have many. Because she understands fantasies about revenge very well, Tsunade lets that go. If you get into trouble, send a summons for me. This time, Kurama's smile is more genuine, deeper and brighter, and he offers her a quick salute. As you wish, Hokage-sama, he murmurs, and then with a flicker of chakra and the barest hint of a mischievous wink, is out the window and blurring away. Tsunade watches him go, then spins sharply on her heel and heads for the Hokage's office, throwing open the doors with a single push. Oh man, if I'm going to be Hokage, you're going to have to put up with me looking over your shoulder all day unless you want someone who's bad at the job.
Tsunade-chan.
Sarutobi's eyes from where he's surrounded by Anbu captains awaiting orders. Tsunade just smiles beatifically and settles beside him in such a way that it practically dares him to try and move her. She's not going to lose anyone else, not if there's any way at all she can stop it. They're a good ways into the forests of death, having decided to focus on speed rather than stealth or eliminating other teams. Naruto has dropped a couple of seals that will act like traps next time someone with chakra passes them, but Team 7 is aiming to beat records, not take out all opposition. Anyone? Sasuke asks as they run, voice barely loud enough to be heard above the faint rustle of their footsteps. Not that I can sense, Sakura reports, and Naruto's glad to see that she's keeping pace with them well, despite her lack of stamina. She makes up for it with the way she can punch a 6-inch deep crater into solid wood, though, so it all evens out in the end. If they triggered one of my traps, we'd know, Naruto agrees, hopping a fallen log and landing smoothly on the surface of a small river. Sakura and Sasuke land beside him, and they pause for breath. This area is a little more open than the rest of the fort. A safe enough place to take a rest, as long as they keep it brief. A moment of silence, and then Sasuke sighs and straightens, Sharingan eyes warily scanning their surroundings, but his voice is even when he says, There are 4 other Konoha teams in the exam, which means there are 21 from other countries. We already know basic information about the other Konoha teams. Sakura immediately grasps what he's saying, even as Naruto is still trying to puzzle out the implication. Sasuke, we can't go after teams from our own village? Immediately, Naruto voices his agreement. I mean, that's just stupid. Even if we don't win, we want Konoha to look strong. So that means we have to let as many of our teams pass as possible. When that earns him 2 startled glances, Naruto just rolls his eyes. What? He demands grumpily, crossing his arms over his chest. I still want to be Hokage someday, as long as we can become the next Sannin first. And the Hokage has to think about the village before everything else. Sakura giggles, but nods. Of course. The team at the next gate over was from Taki? 3 gates down was that team from Kusha, Sasuke points out. They won't be used to fighting in forests, so we'll have the advantage of familiar terrain. That kunoichi with the tongue was really creepy, Naruto objects. Next. Sakura closes her eyes, trying to remember. The examiner called out the gates. We were 12. Ataki team was 13. Akumo team was 14. The Kusu team was 15. And Nata's team was 16. I don't remember more than that. Naruto rolls his eyes. Sakura-chan, don't be stupid. That's amazing. So, which one? Sasuke considers carefully, red and black eyes narrowing as they fade back to plain black. Kumo. They won't have had much experience fighting in Fire Country Forest, even if their country does have trees. And the Forest of Death is definitely a Fire Country standard, if more concentrated than normal. Like the leeches? Sakura makes a face. Like the leeches, Naruto agrees with a laugh. Can't we just knock out teammates? Sasuke complains. It would be easier, and it has Kiba. For a second, Naruto is definitely tempted, but he makes himself shake his head. No, he says firmly. And I think you're forgetting about Hinata-chan. Or do you want to be the one to beat her up and take their scroll? Sasuke grimaces. Not particularly. But we don't even know if the Kumo team has the scroll we need. A simple shrug is the only answer he gets from the blonde. Sakura just smiles. Well, if they don't, we'll apologize for the mistake and move on. I keep the scroll. Her expression is unfailingly innocent. Well, if we forget to give it back to them, that's one more team knocked out. And we can pass it on to another Konoha team if they need it, right? Sasuke studies her for a long moment, then trades glances with Naruto. I'm glad we're on the same team. Have I mentioned that recently? Sakura beams and throws her arms around the boy's shoulders, pulling them into a fond, if tight, half hug. Aww, I love you guys too. Now let's go, we've got Kumo-nin to catch. Naruto grins back, even though his nose is being smashed into Sasuke's cheek and he's breathing in pink hair. Go with planning. Sasuke pulls back, face slightly flushed. Naruto assumes he's out of breath from the hug, but his eyes are glittering with a savage sort of anticipation. For Kumo-nin? Our villages are practically enemies. Why not? Plan H. For that? Marry me, Sasuke. I'll make a better husband than Kurama-ni could ever dream of. Naruto answers with a wide, devious grin and heads for the riverbank at a run. Sakura falls in on his left, Sasuke on his right, and Naruto is absolutely certain that the Kumo team will never know what hit them. Sasuke's cheeks are still flushed, even a good 10 minutes later. Naruto's not entirely sure why, but shoves the thought away to be considered later.